Chapter 1, Sella's Point of View. The video is 6 seconds long and it arrives at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, from a number I have never seen before, while I am standing in the nursery doorway watching Neo finally fall asleep. I almost don't open it. The apartment is warm and quiet in that particular way. It only gets after 40 minutes of rocking and 2 rounds of his favorite song, and I am holding my phone loosely in one hand, with the screen facing down the way I always do during his bedtime. But the notification sits there blinking, and something about it pulls me, and before I make a conscious decision, my thumb is already on the screen. No greeting, no name, just a video file attached to 11 digits I do not recognize. I press play. The restaurant fills my screen. 40 floors up, floor-to-ceiling windows, M. I know this restaurant. I have sat inside it twice, both times across from Riven, both times with her hand covering mine on the white tablecloth and the city glittering behind her, like it existed just for the two of us. In the video, Riven is not sitting across from me. She is standing near the window beside a candlelit table, leaning toward a woman I have never seen in my life. Long brown hair, dark fitted dress, the kind of posture that fills a room without trying. Riven's left hand is at the woman's waist, and it is not resting there lightly the way you touch someone during a passing conversation. It is holding. Intentional. The woman tilts her face upward, and Riven does not step back, does not turn her head, does not do any of the things I spend the next 4 replays desperately searching for. The kiss is slow and completely unhurried, the city burning gold behind them through the glass, and it lasts exactly 6 seconds before the screen goes black. I stand in the nursery doorway and I watch Neo sleep. I watch his chest rise and fall, watch his small fist curl tighter around the edge of his patterned blanket, and I stay exactly where I am for a long time because my legs have made a decision my brain has not caught up to yet. I am not crying. I want to note that because it surprises me too. My hands are still and my face is dry, and what moves through me instead of tears is something much quieter and far more serious. A cold arriving clarity that does not ask for your permission before it rearranges everything you thought you understood about your own life. Then, the message arrives beneath the video, and everything I thought this was shifts entirely. Protect your son. Just those 3 words, aimed directly at Neo, at my child sleeping 6 feet away with his blanket pulled to his chin, completely safe, completely unaware. I read the message 4 times, and each time it lands from a greater height, like something dropped from a building and still falling. Someone sent me footage of my alpha and attached a warning that had nothing to do with my marriage. Every word in that message was pointed at my son, and I do not yet understand why, and that gap in my understanding frightens me more than the video ever could. I call the number back immediately. It rings twice, and on the second ring, the line clicks dead, and when I pull the phone away from my ear, the number is already gone from my screen. I stare at the blank space where 11 digits just were, and the cold clarity inside me sharpens into something with a distinct edge, something I can feel pressing firmly against the inside of my chest, like a hand pushing from the wrong direction. I go to the living room and I sit on the couch in the dark and I wait. Riven comes home at 10:22 p.m. I hear her key in the lock, hear the familiar settled weight of her footsteps crossing the entryway, hear her keys land on the side table the exact same way they land every single night. She comes around the corner still in her coat, and when she sees me sitting there with the lights low, she gives me that tired end-of-meeting smile, the one that is supposed to say the hard part of the day is behind her now, the one I have spent 4 years learning to read like a second language. "You're still up," she says, her voice easy, carrying nothing. "Neo just went to sleep," I say, and I am genuinely surprised by how steady my own voice comes out. She nods and moves toward the hook by the door to hang her coat. And that is the moment, that simple, ordinary, completely unremarkable moment, when my body stops waiting for my mind and simply tells me what it already knows. I am an omega, and for an omega, scent is not a feeling or a suspicion or something you talk yourself into or out of. It is the first and most precise language my body has ever spoken, and it reads the air the way your eyes read words on a page, completely, automatically, with no option to look away. The other woman's heat scent lifts off Riven's coat the moment she shrugs it from her shoulders, and it is not faint, and it is not the kind of trace that comes from a handshake or a crowded room. It is deep and warm and sustained, the biological mark of someone who was held close long enough and near enough for her body heat to move into Riven's clothing and settle there. My body identifies it in under 4 seconds and delivers its conclusion with complete certainty and zero mercy. Riven hangs her coat and turns back toward the hallway. "I'm going to jump in the shower," she says, already moving. "Long night. Go ahead," I say. She disappears down the hallway. The bathroom door closes. A few seconds pass, and then I hear the shower start. Water hitting tile, that sound I have fallen asleep to 100 times, and I sit on the couch and I count to 10 slowly. And then I stand up. I go to the nursery first. I lift Neo from his crib without turning the light on, moving entirely by memory and the soft glow of his nightlight, and I hold him against my chest while he makes one small sleepy sound and turns his face into my neck. I press my mouth against the top of his head and breathe him in, warm and clean, that smell that belongs only to him and has nothing wrong in it. And I make a decision in that moment that I keep so deep inside myself that no one, not even Riven, will ever be able to reach it and pull it back out. I carry him to the bedroom with the shower still running. I pull the packed bag from under the bed one-handed, the one I put together 2 years ago during a security lockdown and never fully emptied, because some part of me that I never examined too closely always understood there might come a night that required moving fast with my son and no room to stop and think. I add his documents from the drawer, his medication from the nightstand, his extra blanket from the shelf. Neo stays half asleep against my shoulder through all of it, and I let him stay there and I work around him, and my hands do not shake once. The shower is still running when I zip the bag. Neo is on my shoulder. I am reaching for my coat when my phone buzzes on the dresser. The unknown number, just 4 words, "Don't use your car." I read it twice. Then I set the phone face up on the dresser, and I pick up my bag, and I pick up my son, and I walk out of that bedroom without looking back. Down the hallway, past the bathroom door, straight to the front door. I do not take the car. I do not say goodbye. I just leave.
Chapter 2. Riven's Point of View. The shower is still running when I realize the apartment is too quiet. Not the quiet of late night. Not the quiet of a sleeping baby and a tired house settling into itself. This is a different kind of quiet altogether, the kind that has weight to it, the kind you feel pressing against the back of your neck before your brain has finished deciding whether to be alarmed. I turn off the water and stand still in the steam for a moment, listening. The towel goes around my shoulders. I open the bathroom door. "Sela," my voice carries down the hallway and comes back to me with nothing attached to it. I tell myself she went to bed early. I tell myself Neo fussed longer than usual, and she is exhausted and already asleep with her phone, face down on the nightstand, the way she sleeps when she is too tired to think about anything anymore. I walk to the bedroom holding the towel at my neck, and I push the door open with one hand, and the first thing I register is the bed, untouched, not even pulled back, the pillows still stacked the exact way the housekeeper left them this morning. The room is empty. Sela. Louder this time. Still nothing. I go to the nursery. I already know before I push the door open. Some part of me that operates below thought and language already knows. But my hand lands on the door anyway, and I push, and I look, and the crib is there, and the crib is empty, and the patterned blanket that Sela tucks around Neo every single night is gone. Not left behind in a corner, not fallen to the floor, gone. I stand in the doorway of my son's room and I look at an empty crib, and for a moment I am not a Mafia alpha with 10 years of authority and command built into every decision I have ever made. I am a woman standing in a dark room where her child used to be, and that distinction matters more than I can afford to let it show. I go back to the bedroom. I open Sela's side of the closet and read what is in front of me, the way I was trained to read a scene, not for what is obvious, but for what the details say beneath it. Her clothes are not ransacked. Nothing is thrown in panic. The things missing are exactly the things that matter. Documents, medication, the items with no sentimental weight, and every practical weight. She packed with a clear head and a plan. She was not running from fear. She was moving with intention, and that distinction tells me more about her state of mind than any note ever could. Then I see the phone. It is sitting on the dresser, face up, dead center, in the exact spot where I would have set down my keys if I had come straight to this room instead of the bathroom. Sela never leaves her phone on the dresser. She never leaves it face up. I cross the room and I pick it up and the screen is still live, still open on a conversation thread. An unknown number, no contact name, and a video file sitting at the top of the screen like something waiting to be found. I press play. The restaurant fills the screen. I recognize it immediately. 40 floors, floor-to-ceiling glass, city burning gold behind the windows. I recognize the table near the window, the specific position, the angle of the candlelight. What I do not recognize is the woman. She is tall, brown hair, dark-fitted dress, and she is a stranger to me. I have never seen her before tonight. I do not know her name, and yet she is standing close enough to me in this footage that the camera reads it as intimacy. I watch her move into my space at that table. I watch myself shift back, not fast enough, not by the half second that would have mattered, and the camera catches the angle at exactly the wrong moment. From where this lens is positioned, from this specific distance, what is on that screen looks like something I chose. It looks like something I wanted. 6 seconds of footage and it is immaculate. The framing is immaculate, the timing is immaculate. I did not kiss that woman. But I understand with complete and total clarity why Sela believes I did. I watch it a second time. What I feel is not guilt, the way a person feels guilt when they are caught in something true. What I feel is the cold, precise recognition of someone who has just identified a weapon built specifically to destroy one thing. Not my organization, not my territory, not my leadership. My family. Someone studied Sela carefully enough to know that an Omega's instincts would do the rest of the work. The footage did not need to be real. It only needed to be believable for long enough. I read the message beneath the video. 3 words. Protect your son. My jaw locks. I call my head of security from Sela's phone because mine is in the bedroom, and I do not want to waste the 12 seconds it takes to find it. The conversation is short and clipped. I am not explaining. I am giving instructions. Exterior camera footage, now. Full sweep of the building, every angle, time-stamped from 8 p.m. I set the phone back down on the dresser, and my hand stays on it a second longer than it needs to, because I am thinking about Sela finding this video, and reading that message, and still having the presence of mind to pack deliberately, and leave a clean apartment, and take our son and go, without making a single sound while I stood in the shower completely unaware. My security lead calls back in under 4 minutes. The cameras were looped, not one, all of them. Every exterior camera on this building was cycling on a 40-minute repeat, and that loop started at 9:04 p.m. I came home at 10:22. The loop was already running when I walked through the door. Whoever prepared this departure did not react to Sela seeing the video. They were ready and waiting for it before I ever left that restaurant. The cold in my chest spreads and sharpens. I pull up the meeting request that brought me to that restaurant tonight. The contact name, the booking reference, the internal channel it came through. I trace it back through my own security chain, back through the message that told me the meeting was legitimate, back through the name of the person inside my organization who passed it along and vouched for it. And when I reach the reservation itself, I find nothing. No booking, no record, no table assigned to anyone connected to my name or my syndicate. The meeting I attended tonight, the reason I was standing at that window, the cover story that placed me in that exact position at that exact time, none of it exists in any system anywhere. The entire evening was built from the inside out. Not just the camera, not just the woman, not just the footage. The reason I was in that building at all was constructed by someone who had access to my internal channels, knew my security protocols, and understood exactly how to move inside my organization without leaving a mark. This was not an outside attack. Someone who sits inside my world, someone who knows my schedules and my channels and my people, built every piece of tonight from scratch and aimed it directly at my family. They are already inside.
Chapter 3, Sela's Point of View. The bus smells like recycled air and old upholstery, and I am sitting in the second to last row with Neo pressed against my side and my bag wedged between my feet and my eyes on the aisle because I have not stopped watching the aisle since we got on. He fell back asleep somewhere around the first hour, his head warm and heavy against my arm, and I have not moved since because moving means disturbing him, and right now his sleep is the only thing in my life that feels safe enough to protect. The cab driver who picked us up outside the building did not ask questions. I flagged him down half a block from the entrance, paid him cash to the bus station downtown, and kept my face turned toward the window the entire ride. The station was half empty at that hour. A few people with rolling suitcases, a man asleep across 3 chairs, a woman behind the ticket counter who looked at Neo and then at me and handed me 2 tickets to the furthest destination on the board without making it a conversation. I do not know this town. I have never been here. That is the only qualification it needed. I have been on this bus for 2 hours and I have no way to know if anyone is looking for us yet. No phone. I left it on the dresser face up, screen still open, and I made that choice deliberately and I do not regret it. But sitting on a dark bus with my son asleep against my arm and no way to call anyone and no way to know what is happening behind me, that choice feels larger now than it did in the bedroom. I keep my eyes on the aisle and I think about nothing, because thinking about nothing is the only way I know how to keep moving right now without coming completely apart in the back of a bus with Neo 3 inches away from me. Hi viewers, have you ever walked away from everything with nothing but your child and a bag and no destination because staying felt more dangerous than the unknown ahead? Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Sella's place? I think about the first year. Not tonight, not the video, not the scent on Riven's coat that my body read before my mind had even caught up. I push all of that to the edges and I think about the first year instead, because the first year was the one that made everything after it possible to endure. Before Neo, before the apartment with the high ceilings and the security detail that rotated every 72 hours, before I learned to read Riven's schedule the way you learn to read weather. Always watching for the signs that told me whether she was coming home that night or not at all. The first year she came home in the way that actually matters, the way where the person walking through the door is still present inside their own body when they get there, still carrying something of you with them from when they left in the morning. We ate dinner at actual hours. We talked about things that had nothing to do with territory or meetings or names I was never supposed to remember hearing. I remember genuinely believing that this was who she was underneath everything else. That the work was the layer on top, and this was the truth beneath it. Then the work got louder. Then the work got bigger. Then the work became the whole room, and we became the thing that fit around it. The thing that got scheduled into whatever gap the work left behind. Riven was never cruel and she was never cold. She was simply somewhere else, even when she was standing right in front of me. And I spent 3 years learning to be okay with that, because I told myself it was the life and this was the cost, and I had made the choice with my eyes open. But loneliness does not announce itself. It moves in the way water moves into a wall. You do not see it happening, and then one day the whole structure is compromised and you are standing there wondering when exactly it went wrong. I stopped telling Riven things. Small things first. A hard day, a funny moment with Neo, something I read that made me think of her. I stopped because telling her meant watching her eyes stay attentive while her mind was already 3 meetings ahead. And after a while, that particular kind of not being heard becomes worse than silence. So I chose silence, and she let me choose it, and we built a very clean, very quiet life around the space where we used to actually know each other. The betrayal did not begin tonight. Tonight was just when I finally had something I could point to. The bus pulls into a small station just after 2 a.m., and I carry Neo off with the bag over my shoulder and stand on the pavement in the cold for a moment, just breathing. The town is quiet in the way that small towns are quiet at night, completely, without apology, every storefront dark and every street empty, and the only light coming from a gas station at the far end of the block. I find the motel 2 streets over on foot, a single-story building with exterior doors, and a parking lot with 3 cars in it, and a buzzing light above the office door that flickers every few seconds like it cannot quite commit to staying on. I pay cash at the front desk and take the key and carry Neo inside without waking him and lay him on the far bed and stand there for a moment, just listening to him breathe in the unfamiliar dark. The room smells like cleaning product and old carpet. The curtains are thick and block the street light completely when I pull them shut. I check the lock twice. I check the window latch. I wedge the desk chair under the door handle and sit on the edge of my bed and let myself be still for the first time since I left that apartment. No phone, no way to reach anyone. No way to know if Riven has found the dresser yet. No way to know if anyone is already tracing the cab. No way to know anything at all except that Neo is breathing and we are here and the door is locked. That is when I noticed the blanket. Neo's patterned blanket. The one I packed from his crib, the one I tucked around him when I laid him down, is folded on the pillow beside him. I did not fold it. I laid it flat and stepped back, and it was flat when I moved away. It is folded now. Neatly, corners aligned, edges even, the way you fold something when you have time and steady hands, and absolutely no reason to rush. I did not hear the door. I did not hear a single sound. I pull Neo against my chest, and he wakes with a small, confused sound, and I press my mouth to the top of his head, and I do not move, and I do not make a sound, and I scan every corner of that room with my eyes and find nothing. The bag is where I left it. The chair is still under the door handle. The window latch is still turned, there is no sign of entry anywhere, and every sign that someone was already here before we arrived. I have no phone, I have no way to reach anyone. I am completely alone in this room with my son, and whoever came in knew that before I did. Then it reaches me. Not sound, not movement, scent. Warm and deliberate and unmistakable. The same alpha scent that lifted off Riven's coat when she walked through our door tonight. The same scent my Omega biology delivered its verdict on in 4 seconds without asking my permission. But it is not coming from the door. It is not coming from outside. It is rising from somewhere inside this room, close enough that whoever left it was standing near my son's bed, and it has nothing to do with Riven at all. My arms lock around Neo. Someone wearing that scent was already in here with us, and I have nothing. No phone, no weapon, no way to call for help, except the locked door behind me, and my son in my arms, and the complete and total certainty that we were found before we even arrived.
Chapter 4. Riven's Point of View. The restaurant manager is sweating before I even finish sitting down. I do not raise my voice. I do not touch him. I simply place my hands flat on the table between us and look at him the way I have learned to look at people when I need them, to understand that the version of this conversation where they cooperate is significantly better than the one where they do not. He is a small man in a pressed shirt with a name tag that says Marcus, and hands that cannot decide whether to stay on the table or drop to his lap, and he has been the floor manager of this restaurant for 6 years, which means he knows exactly who I am and exactly what it means that I am sitting across from him at 8 in the morning in an empty dining room with 2 of my people standing at the door. The woman, I say. Dark dress, brown hair. She was at table 14 last night. I need everything you have on her. Marcus clears his throat. We don't have a record of. I know there is no reservation, I say. I am not asking about the reservation. I am asking about the woman. Who seated her? Who took her order? Who refilled her water? I want every staff member who touched that table last night sitting in that chair within the next 2 hours. He nods. He reaches for his phone. His hands are not steady. By 10 a.m., I have spoken to 4 servers, 2 kitchen staff, 1 sommelier, and the hostess who worked the front entrance from 6 to close. Every single one of them remembers the woman. Brown hair, dark dress, arrived alone, sat at table 14 without being escorted, ordered a single glass of wine that she did not finish, and was gone before the dinner rush peaked. What none of them can tell me is how she got to that table. The hostess has no record of seating her. The reservations log has no entry for that table after 7 p.m. The entrance camera shows every person who walked through that front door last night, and the woman in the dark dress is not among them. She exists in the memory of every person who served her, and in 6 seconds of footage on a phone that is currently sitting on a dresser in my apartment, and nowhere else. She did not enter through the front door. She did not enter through the service entrance. I pull that footage myself and go through it frame by frame and find nothing. She did not come up in the elevator from the parking structure because the parking structure camera shows no one matching her description, arriving at any point during the evening. She appeared at that table the way something appears in a dream, completely, without process, without a single traceable step that led her there. I sit in the empty dining room after the last staff member leaves, and I look at table 14 from across the room, and I think about what it takes to move a person through a secured building without leaving a single mark on any system. That is not luck. That is not improvisation. That is a level of operational planning that requires inside knowledge, not of this restaurant specifically, but of how secured locations work, where the gaps are, which systems can be interrupted without triggering an alert, and which cannot. Whoever placed that woman at that table knew this building the way my own people know my buildings. They studied it, they mapped it, and then they walked her through the one gap no camera covered and sat her down at the exact table where I would be standing at the exact moment the footage would matter. I pull my lead investigator aside in the corridor outside the dining room. His name is Dale, and he has worked for me for 9 years. And I trust him the way you trust someone who has had every reasonable opportunity to betray you and never once taken it. I give him 3 things to find: the identity of the woman, the name of whoever cleared her entry into this building, and the source of the internal message that brought me to this restaurant last night. I do not tell him what I already suspect about that 3rd item. I want to see what he brings back before I say it out loud, because saying it out loud makes it real, and I am not ready for it to be real yet. He comes back to me 2 hours later with 2 answers and 1 piece of information that makes the temperature in the corridor feel like it drops 10 degrees. The woman has no identity, not a thin file, not a partial record, not an alias that leads somewhere before going cold. Nothing. No name, no photograph, in any database my people can access. No financial trail, no travel record, no employment history. She is a blank in every system that should have something on her, which means she was deliberately constructed to be untraceable, which means whoever hired her had the resources and the connections to erase a person completely from the kind of records that are not supposed to be erasable. The entry point into the building is a service corridor on the 14th floor that connects to a freight elevator not visible from any active camera. The camera that should cover that corridor was not looped the way the exterior cameras on my building were looped. It was simply turned off, manually, from an access panel that requires a specific keycard to open. The keycard that opened that panel last night is registered to a staff member who called in sick this morning. When Dale's team went to his home address, the apartment was empty, cleared out completely. Furniture gone, closets bare, a glass of water still sitting on the kitchen counter like he left in the middle of something and did not look back. He was gone before I even sat down with Marcus. Someone told him I was coming. Someone with access to my movements, my investigation timeline, my decision to come to this restaurant this morning rather than send someone else, told this man to run before I arrived, and he ran, and now there is a clean apartment and a glass of water and nothing else where a person used to be. I stand in the corridor and I look at Dale and he looks back at me, and neither of us says what we are both thinking because we do not need to. I tell him to find the internal message, the one that brought me to that restaurant last night, the one that came through my own security channel and told me the meeting was legitimate. I tell him I want the originating terminal, the login credentials used to send it, and the name attached to those credentials. He brings it to me 40 minutes later on a single printed page, and I read it once, and I fold it in half, and I put it in my jacket pocket, and I walk out of that restaurant without saying another word to anyone. The message that brought me to that restaurant last night, the one that moved through my own internal system, the one that carried my own security clearance codes, the one that 3 of my most senior people saw and verified as legitimate before it ever reached me, was sent from a terminal that belongs to someone who has sat across from me at my own table. Someone who has been inside my organization for years, someone whose name I know the way I know my own. And that same person has not responded to a single message since last night.
Chapter 5. Selah's Point of View. The gas station light is the only thing between me and the dark when I walk out of that motel parking lot with Neo on my hip and my bag cutting into my shoulder and my eyes already scanning the road ahead, because I am not stopping, I am not slowing down, and I am absolutely not looking back at that room. A truck idles at the pump closest to the road, and I walk straight to the driver's window and knock twice. And when the man inside rolls it down, I tell him I need to get to the next town over, and I have cash and a sleeping baby, and I would be very grateful if he could help me. He looks at Neo. He looks at me. He unlocks the door. He does not ask a single question the entire ride, and I do not offer a single word, and by the time he drops me at a small coastal town 40 minutes up the road, the sky is starting to go gray at the edges, and Neo is still asleep against my chest, and I am still moving on pure decision alone. Because the moment I stop making decisions is the moment everything I am holding together comes apart. I find a room above a laundromat on a side street 2 blocks from the water, pay 2 nights cash to a landlady who does not ask for a name, and carry Neo up a narrow staircase to a room with a window that faces the sea. I wedge the chair under the door handle. I check the window latch. I lay Neo on the bed, and I sit beside him, and I listen to the sound of waves through the glass, and I let myself take one full breath for the first time since 9:47 p.m. the night before. One breath. That is all I allow myself, because whatever that was in the motel room, whatever left that scent and folded that blanket and moved through a locked room without making a single sound, it did not follow me to that gas station by accident. It was already there, already ahead of me, and the only advantage I have right now is that I am still moving and they do not yet know in which direction. By the next morning, Neo is laughing. It catches me completely off guard. We are at a small bakery 2 streets from the laundromat room. The only place I feel safe enough to take him for an hour because it has 2 exits and a clear line of sight to the street, and the woman behind the counter tears a small piece of bread from a fresh loaf and holds it out to him without asking, and he reaches for it with both hands and laughs. That full body laugh he has, the one that starts in his chest and takes over his whole face. And for one single unguarded moment, I feel something loosen in my chest that has been locked tight since the moment I pressed play on that video. He is okay. Right now, in this moment, he is completely okay, and I hold on to that the way you hold on to something when you know you are about to need it. The woman behind the counter smiles at him. "How old?" she asks. 2, I say. "Visiting family?" "Just passing through," I say, and I pick up my order and I move to the table furthest from the window, and I keep my eyes on the door. She is just a bakery woman, I know that. But I also know that 2 days ago I was in a locked motel room and something got in anyway, and so now every warm smile has a question underneath it, and every simple conversation has a second meaning I have to check before I let it go. That is what fear does when it has been confirmed enough times. It stops feeling like paranoia and starts feeling like sense. It is on the second day that I notice the man. He is at the end of the street when we leave the bakery, leaning against the wall with his phone in his hand and his eyes not quite on his screen. The way people look when they are pretending to look at something else. I notice him the way I have learned to notice things since that motel room. Not by staring, not by reacting, but by filing. I file him and I keep walking, and I take the long way back to the room and I count to see if his footsteps follow mine. They do not. But when I pass the same street an hour later with Neo in my arms, he is gone, and the specific way he is gone, no trace, no coffee cup left, no reason for a person to stand on a corner for an hour and then vanish cleanly, tells me more than his presence did. My first thought is Riven. My first thought is always Riven now, that she found us, that her people are closing in, that the net she has the resources to build is already around us and tightening. But something about the man on the corner does not feel like Riven's operation. Riven's people are precise and invisible. Riven's people do not stand on corners where I can see them. Whoever is watching us right now wants me to know I am being watched, and that is a different kind of message entirely, and I do not yet understand what it is asking me to do. I take Neo upstairs and I lock the door and I sit on the edge of the bed and I think. That is when I hear the footsteps in the hallway. Not the landlady. Her step is heavier and she always comes up the stairs talking to herself in a low, continuous murmur that I have already memorized because I listen for it every time the building makes a sound. These footsteps are lighter, measured. The footsteps of someone who is being very careful about how much noise they make, which is itself a kind of noise if you know how to listen for it. I pull Neo off the bed and stand with my back against the wall beside the door and I wait. The footsteps stop directly outside. Silence. 10 seconds. 20. Then a shadow passes under the door, slow, unhurried, the shadow of someone standing still on the other side, and I press Neo's face gently into my neck to keep him quiet, and I do not breathe, and I stare at the line of light under that door like it is the only thing in the world that matters right now, because it is. I need to step into the hallway. Neo has been in the same clothes for 2 days, and I have been carrying him on one hip for so long my arm has gone numb below the elbow, and there is a bathroom at the end of the hall with a tub, and I promised him a bath tonight, and I am going to give him that bath because he is 2 years old and he deserves at least one normal thing in the middle of all of this. So I move the chair from under the handle and I open the door and I step out. She is standing at the end of the corridor, not rushing, not reaching for anything, just standing there with her arms at her sides and her brown hair over one shoulder and her eyes on me with the particular stillness of someone who stopped being in a hurry the moment she saw my face. I know her before my mind finishes processing what my eyes are showing me, not because I have seen her face before, but because my body knows her the way it knew the scent in the motel room, the way it knew the coat, the way an Omega knows a threat that has been close enough to leave a biological mark. It is her, the woman from the footage, the woman from the motel room, the scent operative. She found us. I take one step back toward my door and she speaks for the first time, her voice completely level, almost gentle, like she is talking to someone she has known for a long time. "Don't go back in there," she says. I look at my door, still closed, still exactly as I left it 2 minutes ago. And then I hear Neo on the other side, a small confused sound, the sound he makes when something in his immediate world has changed and he does not understand what. And my blood goes completely cold because I did not leave anyone in that room with my son. I left him alone. I was gone for less than 60 seconds, and someone is already in there with him.
Chapter 6. Riven's Point of View. Dale sets the file on the table in front of me and does not say anything, which tells me everything I need to know about what is inside it before I open it. I open it. The woman's operational profile takes up the first 3 pages. No real name, that is standard for this category of contractor, and the fact that she falls into a category at all is the first thing that stops me cold. She is not a mistress. She is not someone who wandered into my life and complicated it. She is a professional, hired and contracted and deployed the way you deploy any other precision instrument, and her specific specialty, the thing she is paid for, the thing she has apparently done before and will do again, is manufacturing false intimacy between an alpha and a target audience, specifically Omega audiences, specifically bonded Omegas whose trust in their alpha is the thing being destroyed. She does not seduce, she does not deceive in the ordinary sense of that word. She uses her own alpha biology as a tool, her scent, her proximity, her body heat, to create a trail of biological evidence so convincing that an Omega's own instincts become the weapon used against her. The camera was secondary. The edited footage was secondary. The primary instrument in this entire operation was never anything I could have seen coming, because it was not aimed at my eyes or my logic or my judgment. It was aimed at Sella's body, and everything her body was built to believe without question. I read the page twice. Then I set it down flat on the table, and I look at the wall across the room, and I allow myself exactly 30 seconds to sit with what I now understand was done to my Omega. Selah smelled that woman on my coat, and her body told her the truth as it understood it. Her instincts processed the evidence and delivered a verdict that felt as certain and as biological as breathing. She did not overreact. She did not spiral into jealousy or insecurity or anything that belonged to her. She responded exactly the way any bonded Omega would respond to that level of scent evidence, because the evidence was designed by someone who understood Omega biology well enough to weaponize it from the inside out. She never had a single moment where the right answer was available to her. The operation was built specifically to make sure of that, and she took our son and she ran to protect him, because that was the only move left to her, which was also exactly what they needed her to do. I close the file and I look at Dale. "Where is she now?" I ask. The operative. "Still mobile," he says. "She has not returned to any of the addresses we have connected to her contractor network. She is in the field." "Which means she is still on assignment," I say. "Yes." I stand up and I button my jacket and I pick up the file and I walk out of the room, because sitting still is no longer something I am capable of, and moving is the only thing that keeps the 30 seconds I just allowed myself from becoming something I cannot pull back from. Dale follows me down the corridor without being asked, because he has worked with me long enough to know that when I walk like this, the conversation is not over. It has simply changed locations. "The terminal," I say without turning around. You trace the internal message back to a specific login. I want the person behind that login in a room with me in the next 20 minutes. Already done, Dale says. Room 3. I stop walking. I turn and look at him. How long have they been waiting? 40 minutes. I think about that. 40 minutes is a long time to sit in a room knowing what is coming. Long enough for fear to do most of the work before I even walk through the door. I turn back around and I keep walking, and I do not hurry, because hurrying is for people who are not certain, and I am completely certain. Room 3 is a plain space. 1 table, 2 chairs, a light overhead that is slightly too bright for comfort, which is not an accident. The man sitting at the table when I open the door has been with my organization for 7 years. His name is Soren, and he has traveled with me, handled intelligence that could dismantle 3 separate operations if it landed in the wrong hands, and sat at my table on 4 separate occasions for meals that had nothing to do with work. He knows my schedule. He knows my security protocols. He knows which internal channels I trust without verification, because I built those channels myself and told the people closest to me how they worked. He looks up when I walk in, and he does not look surprised, which means he has been sitting in this room for 40 minutes doing what people do when they have already decided how to face what is coming. I sit down across from him, and I put the file on the table between us, and I do not open it. I am going to give you one opportunity, I say. Not because you have earned it, because I want to understand. Soren looks at the file. Then he looks at me. It was never about you, he says. I know, I say. Tell me who it was about. He is quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that is not hesitation, but organization. Choosing which words in which order. There are people, he says carefully, who have been watching your son since before he was born. Not because of you. Not because of Sela. Because of what he represents to certain factions who have been looking for a way to consolidate power for a long time. An Omega-born child with full alpha inheritance rights in your bloodline is not just your son. To these people he is a mechanism. A living legal instrument that could bring 3 rival factions under one claim if he is positioned correctly and controlled completely. I look at him across that table and I keep my face exactly where it is. Who commissioned the operation? I say. It is not a question. He tells me the name. I have heard this name before, not as an enemy, not as a rival, as a figure at the outer edge of my own world, someone with resources and reach and a particular kind of patience that I have always recognized as dangerous in other people, and apparently failed to recognize as dangerous when it was directed at me. Someone who has been waiting, specifically and deliberately, for the right moment to move on my son. And the right moment, as it turns out, was always going to be the moment Sela left the safety of my house. The operative, I say. Where did you send her? Soren's expression shifts. Just slightly. Just enough. Riven. Where? I say. He looks at the table. I sent the location 20 minutes ago, he says. Before your people came through the door. I did not know you had found the terminal yet. I thought I still had time. He pauses. I am sorry. The room goes very quiet. 20 minutes. The operative has had Sela's location for 20 minutes, and I am sitting in this building, and Sela is out there somewhere with no phone and no protection, and our son, and absolutely no idea that the woman who has been following them since the motel room now has a precise address and 20 minutes of head start. I am already standing. I am already moving. Dale is already in the corridor when I come through the door and I give him the location in 4 words, and he is on his radio before I finish the sentence, and we are moving down that hallway at a pace that has nothing to do with composure anymore, because composure is for situations that still have margin in them, and this one does not. 20 minutes. I have to get to my family before that operative does what she was sent there to do.
Chapter 7. Sela's point of view. The woman steps in front of me before I even clear the door frame. One moment I am moving toward my door, and the next the alpha operative with the scent who kissed Riven is simply there. Between me and the handle, between me and my son, between me and every option I had mapped out in the half second before she moved. She does not grab me. She does not raise her voice. She just stands there with her arms at her sides and her eyes on mine, and the particular physical stillness of someone who has already calculated every direction I could go and is not concerned about any of them. Behind her, the door to my room opens, and the second operative steps out with Neo on her hip. And Neo sees me immediately and reaches for me with both arms and says my name, the way he says it when something is wrong and he needs me to fix it. Mama, I'm here, I say. I'm right here, baby. Stop moving, the operative in front of me says, quietly, almost gently. I stop. Not because she frightens me, and not because I have given up, and not because I cannot think of 3 different ways to get around her in the next 4 seconds. I stop because the second operative is already moving toward the staircase with my son, and every step she takes away from me is a step I cannot afford to spend fighting the woman in front of me. Staying close to Neo is the only move that matters right now. Everything else is secondary to that one calculation. Walk, and don't cause a scene, else things can go wrong quickly for you and your baby, the operative says. I walk. They move us out of that building fast and without noise. Operative in front, operative behind. Neo still reaching back over the second woman's shoulder with his hand open toward me, and me keeping my eyes on that hand the entire way down the staircase and through the side exit and into the vehicle waiting at the curb. Clean, unmarked. Already running, the kind of vehicle that has been sitting there long enough that nobody on this street registered it as out of place, which means it was here before we checked in, which means they had this address before we ever arrived. Inside the vehicle, the scent operative sits beside me, and the second operative settles across from us with Neo in her lap, and I watch my son's face shift, watch the distress in it soften and ease in a way that has nothing to do with the situation getting better. I understand what is happening because I am an Omega, and I know what a deliberate alpha Talcom scent does to a child's nervous system, how it moves through them chemically and tells their body that the nearest alpha is safe and in control, and that there is no immediate threat. It is one of the most instinctive biological responses an Omega child has, and the operative is using it with the precision of someone who understands exactly how it works and has used it before. She is not comforting my son. She is chemically overriding his fear response so he stops reaching for me, stops drawing attention, stops being a problem in a moving vehicle. The fury that moves through me watching her do it is the cleanest and most focused thing I have felt since I left that apartment. I keep talking to him. His name first, then his song, then the seagulls from that morning, the bakery woman, the piece of bread, anything that belongs to us and not to the woman holding him. His eyes find mine across that vehicle and stay there, and I do not look away once for the entire 40 minutes it takes to reach wherever they are taking us. The compound is gated and walled and completely controlled. We are taken through a side entrance and down a corridor and into a room that is clean and locked and has a window looking onto an interior courtyard with no exits I can identify from this angle. A bed, a chair, a small bathroom, and on the table by the wall, Neo's favorite kind of cup, already filled, already waiting. That cup stops me completely. They knew the exact size, the exact color, the exact shape of the cup my son reaches for without thinking. Someone watched him long enough and closely enough to know that specific detail about a 2-year-old boy and the full weight of that, how long this has been in motion, how many ordinary moments of our lives were observed and recorded and used, settles into me and does not move. I sit on the floor with Neo in my lap and my back against the wall. I do not think about escape yet. Not until I understand more about what is outside that door. I think about the sequence instead. The video at 9:47 p.m., the messages. The motel room entered before we arrived, the man on the corner, the operative in the hallway, every single piece of it running in the same direction, all of it designed to accomplish one thing, get Neo out of Riven's protected house and into open territory. And I ran. I picked him up and I packed that bag and I walked out of the only place in the world where we were actually safe. Because I believed what I saw on that screen, and I believed what my body told me about the scent on that coat, and I had no way of knowing that both of those things had been constructed specifically for me. I carried my son directly into the arms of the people who needed me to run. The door opens. I felt sent. She comes in alone this time. She closes the door behind her and stands there and looks at me on the floor with Neo, and for a moment neither of us speaks. I speak first because I have been carrying this question since the motel room, and I am done waiting for the right moment to ask it. Are you working with Riven? I ask. She looks at me. Something moves across her face, not quite a smile and not quite surprise. She laughs. A short, genuine laugh, the laugh of someone who has just heard something so far removed from the truth that the distance itself is almost worth appreciating. She hasn't even clocked what she lost yet, she says. I go very still. What does that mean? She tilts her head slightly. That video you saw, that night at the restaurant, you think you know what happened? She pauses, and the pause is deliberate and timed and designed to land exactly where it lands. You don't. I stare at her. My arms tighten around Neo without me deciding to tighten them. Are you telling me the video wasn't real? She says nothing. She holds my gaze for 3 full seconds, and the silence is the most complete answer she could have given me because it removes the floor from under the one thing I have been most certain about since the night this started. Then she crouches down, so we are eye to eye, and when she speaks again, everything that was almost human in her expression is gone, and what remains is flat and certain and completely without warmth. Nobody is coming for you, she says, not because they don't know where you are, because by the time anyone gets close enough to matter, what we need from Riven will already be done. Your son is not going to be hurt. He is simply the most valuable thing in the world to one specific person, and that person is going to give us everything she has built, her territory, her leadership, every legal document, and every holding she has spent 10 years accumulating to get him back. Because there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that woman will not hand over for this child. She stands. She moves to the door. So understand what this is. This is not a rescue situation. This is a transaction, and you are not the one being purchased. The door closes. The lock turns. Neo shifts in my lap and presses his face into my neck, and I wrap both arms around him, and I sit in that silence, and I let her words move through me one by one. The territory, the leadership, everything Riven has spent 10 years building. They are going to take all of it using my son as the mechanism, and there is nothing I can do from inside this locked room to stop it. But it is not the threat that sits loudest in me right now. It is the other thing, the thing she did not finish explaining. The video I watched 4 times and carried out of that apartment like evidence. The scent I identified in 4 seconds and built every decision on because my own body delivered the verdict and I trusted it the way an Omega trusts her instincts. Completely, without question, because that is what instincts are for. You don't know what happened. If the video was not real, then I left for nothing. I took our son and I walked out of that apartment and led us both straight here. And Riven has been trying to find us since the moment she came out of that shower and found an empty crib and a phone on the dresser. She has been moving through whatever is between her and us this entire time, and she does not yet know that the people she is racing to get ahead of already have us inside a locked room in a gated compound with a cup of water on the table and no way out. And somewhere in the dark outside these walls, my alpha is still running towards something she does not yet know she is already too late to reach.
Chapter 8. Riven's Point of View. The compound layout is on the tablet in my lap, and I have memorized every line of it by the time we are 4 minutes out. 2 gates, east and west. 8 confirmed guard positions, based on Dale's intelligence pull, from the 40 minutes between Soren giving up the location and me getting into this vehicle. 3 interior corridors, 1 holding wing at the north end of the building with 4 rooms off a single hallway. Camera coverage on every exterior angle but a blind spot at the east gate, where 2 coverage zones overlap without quite meeting. 30 centimeters of unmonitored space that my team is going to use to cut the exterior line before we move. I have 8 people with me, the 8 I would call if everything else had already failed, the 8 who have been with me long enough that I do not need to explain what is in that compound, or what happens if we do not get there fast enough. They already know. The vehicle is completely silent except for the engine and the sound of equipment being checked and rechecked in the dark. Dale is in the front seat. He turns around once and looks at me, and I look back at him, and he turns around again, and that is the entire conversation we need to have. The compound appears through the windshield at 11:14 p.m., a walled property set back from the road with a gated entrance and exterior lighting positioned to illuminate the approach from every direction. Whoever designed this security layout understood that visibility is its own deterrent. I study the guard positions through the window as we pass the perimeter slowly, and my jaw locks before we have completed the pass, because what I see does not match what Dale's intelligence told me I would find. The guard rotation is wrong. Not slightly wrong. Completely wrong. More people, different positions, covering angles that the intelligence identified as blind spots. Someone updated this compound's security after Soren sent the location forward. They knew I was coming. They have been preparing for me since before I left that building with Soren's confession still in the air. This is not a location they are hiding in. This is a location they set up to slow me down. I tell Dale to take us around to the east approach, and I pull up the layout again, and I find the blind spot, and I find the exterior line, and I make the call. We go in through the east gate on foot, cut the line in the overlap zone, move through the outer corridor before the rotation brings a guard back to that position. We have a window of approximately 90 seconds between rotation cycles. I tell my team 90 seconds and I watch them process it, and nobody asks a follow-up question, because these are not people who ask follow-up questions when the timeline is 90 seconds. We move. The east gate takes 40 of those seconds. The line is cut, the lock is bypassed, and we are through and into the outer corridor, with 50 seconds to spare, and I am already recalibrating the interior layout in my head, based on what the exterior told me about the updated security when the lights go out. Every single one of them. Simultaneously. Not a power failure. A lockdown. The entire compound kills its power in one coordinated pulse, and the corridor goes from lit to absolute dark in under a second. And I hear my team stop moving around me, because moving in complete darkness in an unfamiliar building is how you walk into something you cannot see coming. I put my hand on the wall to my left and I keep it there, and I stay completely still and I listen. Somewhere deeper in the building, something is emitting a low-frequency hum that I recognize after 3 seconds as a signal blocker. Broad spectrum, strong enough to kill every communication device my team is carrying. I check my earpiece. Dead. I check my phone. No signal. We are 8 people in a dark building with no communication, no confirmed position of Sela and Neo, and no way to coordinate with each other beyond voice range. I find Dale by touch in the dark, and I put my mouth close to his ear. Split. You take 4. Cover the west corridor and every exit on that side. Nobody leaves this building. I take the north wing. I feel him start to object, and I cut it off before it forms. Nobody leaves, I say again. That is the only instruction that matters right now. He moves. I hear his team peel off in the dark, and then I am moving north with 3 people behind me and one hand still on the wall, and my eyes adjusting to the darkness, degree by degree, until the corridor resolves into shapes, door frames, turns, the long straight line of the north hallway ahead of me. Then I hear him. Neo. His voice, small and confused, coming from behind a door at the far end of the north corridor. Not crying, not screaming, just talking the way he talks when he is uncertain about something, that particular 2-year-old running commentary that he keeps up when the world around him is not making sense, and he is narrating it to himself to stay calm. I know that sound. I know every register of my son's voice, and I know that one specifically, and hearing it in this dark corridor after everything that has happened since I came out of that shower and found an empty crib does something to the inside of my chest that I do not have language for and cannot afford to process right now. I move toward it. She steps out of the dark 10 feet from the door, the operative with the scent, standing in the center of the corridor with her arms at her sides and her eyes on me with the same particular stillness she has carried through every part of this operation, the stillness of someone who is never surprised because she has already accounted for every possible development before it happens. She looks at me the way you look at something you have been waiting for. She does not reach for a weapon. She does not need to announce a threat, because the threat is already in the room behind her, and we both know it. Take another step, she says quietly, and the people on the other side of that door move your son through the back exit before your team gets there. By the time you find them again, it will already be over. I stop. I look at her. I look at the door. I can still hear Neo on the other side of it. His voice, his specific, uncertain commentary, 11 feet away from me through a locked door with this woman standing between us. I run the calculation in under 4 seconds, and I make the decision that costs me the most of anything I have decided tonight. I press the communication button on my earpiece twice, the dead signal backup, the manual click code my team knows means cover every exit simultaneously, and I hear 3 sets of footsteps behind me split and move, and then I am standing in this corridor alone with the operative, and no backup and nothing between me and that door except her. I traded my own safety for the guarantee that nobody leaves this building with my son. She reads the decision on my face before I take the first step, and she moves to meet me. And she is fast. Faster than the intelligence suggested. Faster than I gave her credit for in my mental preparation during that vehicle ride. Fast enough that the first exchange happens before I have fully closed the distance and I take a hit to my left side that I feel in a specific and informative way. The way your body reports damage when it wants you to know the information is relevant, and you should factor it into your next decision. I factor it in and I keep moving. She is trained and she is strong, and she has the particular advantage of someone who is fighting to buy time rather than to win, which means every move she makes is designed not to put me down but to slow me down, and slowing me down is almost harder to fight than someone trying to finish it, because there is no single moment where I can end this cleanly. She makes me work for every foot of that corridor. She makes me pay for every step toward that door, with something I will feel tomorrow, and the whole time I can hear Neo on the other side of it, and that sound is the only thing that keeps my decision-making clean when my body is telling me to stop and assess and rest for 1 second. I do not stop. I do not assess. I do not rest for 1 second. I get through her. Not cleanly and not without cost. My left side is sending me information I am choosing not to act on, and there is something warm on my forearm that I do not look at. But I get through her, and I get to the door, and I hit the manual release on the lock, the way Dale showed me from the compound layout, and the door swings open, and I step through it, and I stop. The room is empty, clean, undisturbed. A bed, a chair, a small bathroom, a window open onto a dark courtyard, a cup on the table by the wall, small, the exact size and color Neo reaches for, sitting empty and abandoned, like someone left in the middle of something and did not come back for it. The back exit on the far wall is open, the door swinging slightly in the air coming through the courtyard, and outside it the courtyard is empty and the night beyond the compound wall is completely silent. They are gone. I stand in the doorway of an empty room with my hand on the frame and the sound of my son's voice still in my head from 30 seconds ago, and I look at that open exit and I understand with complete and devastating clarity what just happened. The operative did not need to stop me. She did not need to win that corridor. She only needed to slow me down long enough, 30 seconds, 40, just enough, for someone to move Sella and Neo through that back exit and into whatever is waiting on the other side of that wall before my team could cover it. And she did. I cross the room and I go through the back exit, and I stand in the empty courtyard and I look at the wall, and I look at the door in it that is still swinging on its hinges, and I put both hands on that wall for 1 moment, and I breathe, and I let myself feel the full weight of how close I just was, and how completely it was not enough. Then I straighten up and I turn around and I go back through that room and back down that corridor, because standing in an empty courtyard is not going to get my son back, and I am not done, and I will not be done until I find them, and there is not a wall or a locked door or a trained operative or a signal blocker or a compound full of people between me and my family that I will not go through to get there. Not one.
Chapter 9, Selah's Point of View. The room they moved us to is smaller than the last one. I noticed it the moment they brought us through the door. The ceiling sits lower, the window shows nothing but a narrow alley and a concrete wall, and the distance between the bed and the door is short enough that I can cross it in 4 steps. This place was built for one purpose and one purpose only, and I am sitting in the middle of it with Neo in my lap and my back against the wall, and I have been awake for every minute since they moved us, because sleeping right now is something I cannot afford. The door opens at what I estimate is somewhere around 2 a.m., and the mastermind walks in alone. I have seen them once before, in the compound, that brief appearance where they crouched to Neo's level and studied him with the focused attention of someone taking inventory. They move the same way now. Unhurried, certain. They close the door behind them and they look at me, and then they look at Neo asleep against my chest, and something in their expression does the calculation it always does when it lands on my son. Not warmth, not cruelty, just assessment. And then they look back at me. Contact has been made with your alpha, they say. Their voice is level and almost conversational, the tone of someone delivering information, rather than making a threat. She has been given her instructions, territory documentation, leadership transfer, full organizational handover, signed and verified. By 6 a.m., they pause. If she cooperates, you both go home tomorrow. I look at them. And if she doesn't, they smile, just slightly. She will. They look at Neo one more time, and then they leave, and the lock turns, and the room is quiet again. And I sit in that quiet, and I let what they just told me move through me and settle. 6 a.m., they have given Riven a deadline, and they are confident enough in her response that they delivered it to me like a scheduling update, like the outcome is already determined, and my role in it is simply to sit here and wait for the morning. I do not sit and wait. I have been inside 2 locations now, and I have been watching every single detail since the moment they put me in that first vehicle. Guard patterns, door mechanisms, how long between checks on this room, where the gaps are in the corridor outside, which operative moves predictably and which one does not. I cannot get out of this building with Neo without being caught before I reach an exit. I know that. I am not trying to escape. What I am trying to do is change what is happening inside these walls, create enough disruption in enough of the right places that when Riven gets here, and she is getting here, I know it the way I know Neo's voice in the dark, not as a hope, but as a fact. She has a gap to move through that was not there before I made it. I start with Neo. I let him wake up fully, and I do not shush him the way I have been shushing him since the vehicle. And a 2-year-old boy who has been kept quiet for hours in an unfamiliar place and is tired and confused and wants his cup and his blanket makes a very specific and very carrying kind of noise that brings the operative outside the door to the window check faster than the regular rotation. I watch the shadow under the door. I watch it appear and then move away, and then I move to the door, and I use the 4 seconds between his window check and his return position to do the one thing I identified 3 hours ago as the gap in this room's containment. And I will not detail what it was because it does not matter what it was. What matters is that it worked, and the corridor outside is no longer exactly what the operative expects it to be when he comes back to his position. Then I sit back down with Neo and I hold him and I wait for Riven. I hear it 11 minutes later. Sound from the exterior of the building, fast and controlled, the specific percussion of people who know exactly what they are doing moving through a structure with complete intention. Not like the compound lockdown which came from inside. This comes from outside and moves inward and the lights go with it, the whole building dropping into darkness in one coordinated cut, which tells me everything I need to know about who is doing this, because the compound lockdown used darkness as a weapon against Riven, and she walked into it, and she learned from it, and she came back and cut the power herself before she came through the door, so it could not be used against her a second time. That is Riven. That is exactly Riven. The sounds in the corridor outside my room change immediately. Guards pulling away from their positions toward the breach points, the operative who was at my door moving fast in the direction of the exterior noise, the gap in the corridor outside widening with every second that the breach pulls attention away from the holding rooms. I stand up with Neo on my hip and I move to the door and I put my hand on it and I wait for 1 more second, because 1 more second is the difference between moving into a corridor that is clear and moving into one that is not. The corridor is clear. I open the door and I step out into the dark and I move toward the sound of Riven, because that is the only direction that makes sense, and it is the only direction I have trusted since I sat in that locked room and understood with complete certainty that she was coming. The door at the end of the corridor opens before I reach it. Riven is standing there, not composed, not behind the alpha mask I have spent 4 years learning to read from a distance. Whatever lives underneath that mask, underneath the controlled voice and the clipped instructions and the end-of-meeting smile she used to bring home at 10 p.m., is completely visible on her face right now, and it has been there the whole time under everything else, and seeing it in this dark corridor after everything that has happened between that apartment and this moment does something to the inside of my chest that I am not ready to name yet but cannot pretend is not happening. She looks at Neo first. She checks him the way you check something you have been terrified of losing. Fast, thorough, her eyes moving over him with the specific focus of someone who needs to know he is whole before they can process anything else. Then she looks at me, And the look is so direct and so completely without the distance I have grown used to from her that I have to make a conscious decision to hold it instead of looking away. I hold it. A voice at the end of the corridor breaks it. The mastermind, moving fast toward the far exit with two people behind them, the particular pace of someone who has just understood that the timeline they were operating on has collapsed and the only remaining option is to get out before the exits close. Riven turns. The mastermind stops. They look at each other across that corridor with everything that has been built and dismantled between them hanging in the air, and then Dale comes through the side door at a position that cuts the mastermind's exit completely, and the two people behind them stop moving and the corridor goes quiet, in the specific way it goes quiet, when everyone in it understands that the outcome has just been decided and it is not the one the mastermind planned for. It is over. Riven turns back toward me and Neo, and she takes one step in our direction, and then she goes down. Not slowly, not with warning, just suddenly and completely, the way a body goes when it has been running on something other than physical capacity for too long, and that something finally gives out all at once. She goes down in that corridor and I am moving before I have decided to move, and Neo reaches for her with both fists and grabs her jacket and will not let go, and I get my arm under her and we are on the floor of that corridor together. All three of us, on the floor, in the dark, in a building that just stopped being a threat, and I hold on to her and she holds on to Neo, and for a moment that has no category and requires none, we just stay there. I've got you, I say. It is the first thing I have said directly to her since I walked out of our apartment. She does not answer. She holds Neo tighter and her head drops, and I feel the full weight of her against my arm, and I do not let go. Dale gets to us within seconds. He takes in the situation in one look and does not waste time asking questions, and within minutes there are people around us, and Riven is being moved, and I stay as close to her as they will let me with Neo on my hip, and I do not let go of her hand in the vehicle, and I do not let go of it in the corridor of the hospital, and I am still holding it when they get her into a room and the doctors take over, and a nurse gently tells me I need to sit down. I sit down, right there in the chair beside her bed. Neo climbs into my lap and I pull his patterned blanket up to his chin and I watch Riven's face in the low light of that room, and I do not leave. I know what the operative told me in that locked room. I know what she did not finish saying and what the silence after it meant. The video was not real. The kiss did not happen. The scent on that coat was a biological weapon, aimed directly at my omega instincts, and it worked exactly the way it was designed to work, and I ran with our son straight into the arms of the people who needed me to run. I have been carrying that knowledge since that room, and I am still carrying it now, and what I do not yet know is what to do with it. Not because I do not believe it, but because believing it means sitting with everything I put us through on the basis of something that was never true, and that is a different kind of weight entirely, and I am not ready to put it down yet. So I sit. I watch her breathe. I do not leave. I do not know how much time passes before my eyes close. When I open them, the room is lighter. Morning, Neo is still asleep in my lap, and the blanket is still pulled to his chin, and the chair is exactly as uncomfortable as it has been all night. I look at Riven's face, and she is still and breathing, and her color is better than it was in that corridor, and I let myself take one full breath of something that is close enough to relief to call it that. Then I look at the door. It is open, just slightly. Not all the way and not closed, somewhere in between, the way a door looks when someone stepped through it recently and did not pull it fully shut behind them. The corridor beyond it is quiet and ordinary and completely unaware of everything that happened to bring us to this room. I look at that door for a long time and I think about what it means that I am sitting here and what it means that I cannot yet make myself stay and what it means that I cannot yet make myself go. And I sit with all of it in the white quiet of that room with my son in my lap and my alpha breathing in the bed beside me. I fold Neo's blanket carefully over the arm of the chair. I lift him gently so he stays asleep. I stand and I walk through the door that is already open and I do not close it behind me. Chapter 10. Author's Point of View. The chair beside the bed is empty. Riven sees it the moment she opens her eyes. The morning light coming through the hospital room window. The machines still running their quiet rhythms beside her. And the chair sitting exactly where it was last night, except that the person who was in it is gone. Neo's patterned blanket is folded on the seat, neatly. Corners aligned, edges even, the same deliberate fold it has carried through every location since the night this started. Riven looks at that blanket for a long time, and then she looks at the door, and the door is not closed all the way. Open, just slightly. The corridor beyond it is quiet and ordinary, and holds no answer to the question Riven is asking it from the hospital bed. She does not go after her. She lies back against the pillow and she breathes and she looks at the ceiling and she lets Sela have the distance because going after her is not the right move and Riven knows it the way she knows most important things. Not because someone told her, but because she has been paying attention, finally, to the right things. Sela left a door open. That is not nothing. That is, in the language the two of them have been speaking to each other in gestures and silences for longer than either of them has been willing to admit, quite a lot. Riven breathes. She waits. She does not chase. 6 months pass. Riven rebuilds what the conspiracy took apart. The mastermind is dealt with through channels that do not require a courtroom and will not appear in any public record. Soren is handled. The Scent Operatives contractor network is identified and shut down completely. Every connection, every alias, every financial thread traced back to its source and cut. Riven withdraws from certain leadership positions not because she is forced to, but because she sits down one evening and makes a list of everything that made her son a target and works backward from it, and the list ends, every time, at the same place, the kind of power that makes a child valuable to people who would use him. She reduces that power deliberately and without announcement, and she does not miss it the way she thought she would, because it turns out the thing she thought she was building all those years was never the thing she actually wanted. She files for scheduled visits with Neo through proper channels. She shows up for every single one of them on time. She brings him back when she says she will bring him back. She does not use a single visit as an opportunity to ask Sela for anything. Not a conversation, not an explanation, not even a look held a second longer than the handoff requires. She gives Sela exactly what Sela has not asked for but clearly needs: time, and the consistent evidence that Riven understands what she almost lost and has reorganized everything around making sure it does not happen again. She does not chase. She does not plead. She simply shows up and shows up and shows up, until showing up is the most honest thing about her. Sela watches all of it from a distance that gets slightly smaller every month without her fully deciding to close it. She watches through Dale, who tells her what she asks and does not tell her what she does not, and through the handoffs at the door, which are brief and correct and completely without pressure, and through the particular way Neo comes home from his visits, full, settled, carrying his father's smell on his jacket, the way children carry the people they love on their bodies without knowing they are doing it. Sela watches Riven crouch down to Neo's level at the door every single time. The goodbye always thorough, always unhurried, always giving him the full weight of her attention for as long as he needs it. And she stands just out of sight inside the apartment, and she watches and she builds a picture one visit at a time of who Riven is in the 6 months since that hospital corridor, and what she sees does not match the person the video told her Riven was. It matches someone else entirely, someone who understood, finally, what the work had been costing and decided the cost was no longer acceptable. Sela does not know when she makes the decision. She is not sure it is a decision so much as an accumulation. 6 months of evidence adding up to something she can no longer argue with. The way water fills a container without anyone deciding to fill it. And then one evening she is standing in her kitchen listening to Neo playing in the next room, and she walks to the front door and she opens it and she leaves it open and she goes back to the kitchen, and she does not examine what she just did too closely, because examining it too closely is how you talk yourself back out of something that is true. Riven arrives at 7 on the dot the way she always does. She walks Neo to the door and she crouches down to his level on the threshold and she gives him his goodbye, his specific, complete, fully attended goodbye, and Neo hugs her neck and she holds him for a moment with her eyes closed, and then she lets him go and he runs inside, and Riven straightens up and she looks at the door and she stops. It is open. She stands on that threshold and she looks at the open door, and the whole of 6 months of showing up and not asking, and not chasing, and not using a single handoff as leverage, sits behind her, and the whole of 9 chapters of everything that brought them both to this threshold sits in front of her and Riven, who has walked through every locked door and dark corridor and compromised compound that stood between her and her family, stands completely still on an open threshold because this is the one door she is not willing to get wrong. She reads it the way she has learned to read everything Sela does, not for what is obvious, but for what the details say beneath it. It is not the apartment door closing behind Sela with the shower still running. It is not the empty crib or the mate bracelet left on the dresser, or the phone set face up as a deliberate act of departure. It is a door left open by someone who opened it on purpose and went back to her kitchen and is waiting to see what Riven does with the information. Riven knows what she does with it. She does not know how long she stands there before Sela's voice comes from inside the apartment, not calling out, not announcing anything, just speaking in the ordinary tone of someone saying the most unremarkable thing in the world. Dinner's getting cold. Riven breathes out. She steps through the door. The kitchen is warm and smells like something that has been on the stove long enough to fill the whole apartment, and Neo is already at the table with his cup and his spoon, and his complete lack of interest in the specific emotional weight of what is happening between the two adults in the room, because he is 2 years old and there is food, and that is sufficient. Sela is at the counter with her back to the door, and she does not turn around immediately, and Riven does not announce herself because she does not need to, and they both know she is there, and the kitchen holds all of that without requiring anyone to say it. Then Sela turns. She turns and she looks at Riven standing just inside her kitchen door, and Riven looks back at her, and the distance between them is smaller than it has been in 6 months, and smaller than it was in that hospital corridor, and smaller than it was in the dark hallway of the second location, and for the first time since a video arrived on a phone at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday and rearranged everything, the distance is small enough that neither of them has to decide very hard. Riven crosses it. She crosses the kitchen in 3 steps, and she puts her hand against Sela's face, the way you touch something you have been careful with for a long time, and Sela does not step back and does not look away, and when Riven leans in, Sela meets her, and the kiss is quiet and unhurried and completely certain, and it does not ask any questions because the questions have all been answered by 6 months of showing up and 1 open door and dinner getting cold on a Tuesday evening in a warm kitchen with their son at the table. It is not a beginning, it is a return. Careful and honest and built this time on the understanding that trust is not a thing you have. It is a thing you make, every day, with the choices that are too small to announce and too important to skip. They have a lot of those choices ahead of them, and they both know it, and neither of them says it, because standing in this kitchen with Neo behind them and the door open behind Riven and the food going cold on the stove, they do not need to say it. They already know. The door stays open behind them, not because anyone forgot to close it. Because neither of them reaches for it, and neither of them will. Not tonight, and maybe not for a long time after tonight. Because an open door in this apartment means something specific now, and they are both fluent in what it means, and they are both, finally, in the same room, reading the same language at the same time. Neo bangs his spoon on the table. "Mama," he says, "eat." Sela pulls back first. She looks at Riven, and something in her face does what it has not done in 6 months. Releases. Just slightly, just enough. She turns back to the stove, and Riven pulls out the chair across from Neo and sits down, and Neo looks at her with the complete satisfaction of a 2-year-old whose world just returned to its correct configuration and goes back to his cup. And in this kitchen on a Tuesday evening, with the door open and the food getting cold and nothing fixed and everything possible, they begin.